What's going on? It's Mario, Final Approach. We are joined today by Dan Compton. You've heard him before on the, I guess we'll call this like a podcast, a video, like a helping hand of ammo from Federal. And so your actual title is?
I'm the Global Product Lane Director for shotgun shells. And then I work for Vista Outdoors, which not a lot of people know is a mainstream name.
Correct.
But basically, I'm the head product guy for Federal, Remington, and Hevi Shot shotgun shells.
All owned
by Vista Outdoors.
By Vista Outdoors. So that's everything.
Yeah, we divide our categories up into, I think rifle, handgun, so on. I'm Shotshell. And then I've got a couple guys that one, Scott Turner, works underneath me.
Yep.
And then he kind of lives and breathes the Federal and Hevi Shot brands. And then Ronnie Evans handles Remington.
Right.
And then it's my job to kind of look at that. And, we're always, as product guys, get the right product to the market at the right time. Right. And, just like you're living it with Final Approach. It's the same.
You have
we kind of do the same things for just different brands, different companies.
Yes.
And then, because we do have, we got products in Federal and that are kind of direct competitors with Hevi Shot and direct Remington. So I try to look at it like, how can I strategically compete with myself to take on the market and do the best we can out there.
Right, and you're also trying to not have you don't want Hevi Shot beating Remington, beating Federal. Like you need to place everything so everybody has its place in the market. So you're maximizing all of it.
Yeah, and it's interesting, with a brand like Hevi Shot, because they're, how'd they get started? Like shooting ducks, right? It's 90% waterfowl focused and turkey. They're a little bit in there.
Right.
So they're trying, how do you grow a brand like that? You got to expand in the upland and so on. Well, if I do that, I don't want the expense of some of my own, Remington or Federal, which are well known for that. So then I'm going after the other guys. How do we grow each of these brands at the expense of someone else? And the goal is, good price, good product.
How do you eat? How do you not eat your own hand?
That's right. And sometimes that may happen,
Well, it's impossible to have 100% not be competing. You are in the same categories. There's
So and there's some areas where you look at the 12 density tungsten stuff. Like Federal, we don't have any offering like that in the lineup. But Remington has Wingmaster HD, legacy product they've had for a long time, and Hevi Shot's got Hevi 12, great products. Right. So at Federal, I look at it and say, maybe I can just let them have that space
and don't enter that.
And then we'll go after it a different way and try to keep premium steel going. We've got bismuth and we've got some TSS. We've got TSS waterfall load. Hevi Shot doesn't have that.
Correct.
So there might be spots where we all need the same thing, but I don't think we need to dilute. There's certain markets that can hold that much product, but for the most part,
there's other lanes where it can't hold that much.
Yeah.
I agree. So probably one of the main things that guys are always asking, and listen, we were just joking about this before we started, but listen, I'm not the pellet count guy. I'm not the guy who tells you there's this much powder in there. That's not me. Yeah. I know what shotgun I have dialed in, what choke I have dialed in, and what I'm shooting for whatever I'm shooting. That I'm dialed in. So, guys always ask, well, I'm going to shoot big geese. What should I shoot? I'm shooting teal early season. What should I shoot? I'm shooting snows. What do I want to do? I always go back to the same thing that I was just taught. And I'm always saying, I'm staying fast. I'm staying 1550 if I can, or very close. And I don't want to switch off that. I don't want to go to 1550 and drop all the way back to 1350, because then I'm really changing my lead, and it's really going to take me time to adjust.
Sure.
And probably time that I don't have when I'm on a hunt somewhere. So I'm going to be a mess.
Yeah. So
I always say, if you're shooting a certain speed, try to stick with that. Mm-hmm. And just on a lead and it's your reaction shooting, you're not aiming a shot. You're not aiming a shotgun. You're coming up and pulling through and shooting. You're doing your rhythm, right? So I don't ever want to break my rhythm. Some guys do, and they just know how to change. I'm not that guy. So if I was going to say anything, I would say stay feet per second. Some guys say, I'm going to stick with my pellet count.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So let's start. So if I'm going to do and listen, we got a cheat sheet because there's a lot of pellet counts to understand.
Sure. Yeah.
So probably the number one is twos. Like everybody probably shoots 2s the most. That's what, like, you know, when you talk to the guys at Rogers and they're selling ammo, it's 2s, 3-inch 2s. So on a pellet count on 3-inch 2s, what are we talking about?
Like a 3-inch ounce and a quarter.
Yep.
So you're if you're doing 1550s, like
yes,
you like
100%.
You're a blue box 1550.
I am a 100% speed shock.
So you got 141 pellets.
Okay.
Right?
And then and then there's ounce and an eighth, right?
Yeah, so that's ounce and an eighth.
Okay.
If you jump up to an ounce and a quarter, 156. So you're gaining another 15 or so pellets in there. So you're gonna fill, typically, like your rule of thumb, you shoot a pattern, right?
Right.
The size of your pattern is about the same.
Right.
As you start dropping in pellet sizes and add pellets, you're starting to fill the pattern in a little bit.
Correct.
Bigger pellets will fly more true. Go pattern some double Bs and go pattern some 6s.
Right.
Double Bs are going to probably be pretty tight, and
Right.
6s will start to open up. It's just the size of the object warrants, it'll react to resistance easier. Like an object in motion stays in motion.
Correct.
You know, the bigger that object is, try to stop a freight train or try to stop a Nerf football.
Right.
You know, the Nerf's going to slow down and be a lot easier to stop.
Right.
So that's kind of where the pellets and the speed can come from. You know, pellets are what kills. So if you want a round full pattern, you know, you add more pellets.
Right.
Usually you got to sacrifice some speed for that because,
Correct.
you know, we're playing within the system that relies on boom, it goes off, the pressure builds, and then the shell opens up and the ammo goes out. That pressure limit, you know, there's kind of rules we agree to as an industry to keep it safe, that we don't want to push this.
Yes.
So if you're going to go, you can go, that's why an ounce and an eighth is typically 1550, and an ounce and a quarter is that 1400 to 1500 price range. And, you know, you might start to see some, you know, you're over pressuring and pushing too far. But the heavier load you go and the faster you start to push it, the more you're going to feel it here.
Correct. Right? Like it's going to kick. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
So I mean that ounce and an eighth versus ounce and a quarter, you said that's only 15 pellets.
And a 2, it's not that.
Right. So you're only talking 15 pellets. And then what's the drop in feet per second on that? What did you say? Like you were coming down just a little.
You'd be going 100 feet per second. So you'd be going from 1450 to 1550 to
1450. Right. We'd be dropping. So.
You know, your 1550 is going to cover ground a little quicker.
Sure.
Right? You don't need as much lead.
That is like, and that's where I stay. I stay in my wheelhouse. I know I know what I need to do, where I need to pull through. It's not like I don't aim. You know what I mean? I don't go, oh, I'm getting, I just literally pick up the gun and I just go right through the bird and I just pull and I'm that's it. Yeah. Like I'm just used to that. So I try not to. And even when I go, if I'm going to shoot like BBs, you know what I mean? I still try to stay at, like, if I can stay within 50 feet per second, 1500 to 15, I'll stay there. Because I don't see much of a difference in my lead or what I'm doing there.
Yeah.
So I'll try to stay there. So if we're going like BBs, so let's talk, let's go that route. So I'm going from 2s to BBs. Like what's my pellet count on BBs? And if we're doing just regular speed shock, we're going.
So in an ounce and an eighth, so like 1550 to fast. Like
right, because we were one.
So this is where you'll start to see a difference. So you're going from, a 2s is going to be a payload 141.
Right.
And you're dropping down to 81. So you're giving up 60 pellets.
Yeah.
You know, so again, your outside spread is about the same.
Yes.
You know, maybe a little tighter, but
you got bigger projectiles.
Really, yeah, you're really missing. You do got better projectiles when they hit, going to have some more energy.
Correct.
But you're giving up some pellets. And that may affect, depending on what choke you use, you know.
Well, that's what we're going to talk next.
We come
Absolutely.
into, like, you know, shot string, right? So
yes.
As shot flies through the air, it's a column. You know, I actually heard referred to one time by a writer. It was like imagine a slinky flying through the air. You know, it's not like this wall of shot.
Right, because
it extends out to some period, and it's kind of like it's a globe of shot flying through the air. That might be, he said slinky because some things maybe slowing down at different phases. And with the swing, that's going to probably change how it releases out of the barrel a little bit.
There's no doubt. And then like shot string for everybody is your first pellet to your last pellet. How long does that stretch out? Mm-hmm. You know, and I've always been the believer in a wad cutter choke. Like I always shoot a pattern master because that's what I'm used to, right? So that cuts the shot string down. Mm-hmm. Now that may screw up some guys because, you know, like you're talking about, when you put it on paper, everything gets there.
Yes.
So you can't. But I always tell guys, if you really want to see your pattern, shoot a cripple on the water.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
see how long your shot string is. You'll see it. Like you'll see it stretch out. So whereas like with a wad cutter or a choke like that, where it's keeping everything, your shot string shorter, it's like a depth charge. You know what I mean? It's like a bomb going off versus a long, string of pellets going over. Now, some guys, shooting wise, that might not work because they're used to swinging through a bird and maybe cutting a couple pellets, hitting the bird, you know what I mean, in that long string, and a bird flies through and you're going to hit them.
Yeah.
So you're going to probably have better success shooting more birds that way. But I'm on the other side where I don't want to just hit them. I just want to kill them right then and there, right? So I don't want to have cripples. Like we want to kill them. We want to kill them dead and get it over with. So when you cut that shot string down, you're actually kind of, I don't want to say handicapping yourself with less pellets at that object, but I mean, that's exactly kind of what you're doing.
You are, because then your lead becomes all that much more imperative, right?
That's right.
You got to be a little more spot on with your lead. We
That's
just
right.
had this conversation last week at the office. We were talking about it's an adjacency. So think of target shooting, right?
Right.
A 16-yard trap shooter. A lot of those targets are either going straight away or slightly at an angle.
Right.
So one of the guys at work, he said he was told you can shoot any choke you want when you're shooting trap as long as it's full. And so and the reason for, but we're like, well, that seems like so much overkill because the target's going away. You don't necessarily need like a longer shot string at an away going target. So imagine hopefully we're not shooting at ducks, they're going away. We're shooting them as they're coming at us.
Correct. Or even if they're passing,
yeah.
right?
So then when you go to passing or hard crossers, that's where your shot string is going to probably become more effective. And then so it was kind of like the discussion between a trap shooter and a sporting clay shooter, where you're shooting all kinds of different scenarios.
Yeah.
And a lot of sporting clay shooters are going for, they want the longer string to give them all the more opportunities so that as that shot is ripping through the air, you got a chance to cover the target as it's
there's two things I think of when like we're talking about shot string, and I think of like if you've watched any military films where they got tracer rounds going, and literally you can watch the tracer rounds go, right? Especially like say out of like a helicopter, or like when they put the big guns out and it's just going, and you see the tracers going. You see that line of if say they're trying to shoot down a plane or something, like you see them trying to get ahead.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you see it. So, and like shot string is like that whole deal. Like you're trying to pull ahead and have that bird fly right through your shot string and get them. So like it's like cracking a whip. Like you want that whip to just like come out and him to go through. So having like a tighter choke or that wad cutter style choke, like it doesn't make you a better shooter right off the bat, because you are handicapped having a shorter shot string and not as many pellets just winging out there. So I always tell guys, if you're going to go to something like that, you need to shoot it and get used to it, because it's not your normal shot string and just pulling through a bird and you're going to cut them with some pellets. So it is totally different. So with that said, if you start coming down in pellets, now you're really cutting yourself down.
You really, your lead just has to be that much more precise.
It has to be right on the It has to be right on the money, and you have to be used to it, and you have to be able to shoot it and be on. Yeah. So I always talk about that.
And you nail it. There's honestly, and the only way to learn is to shoot. Like you got to shoot and you shoot and shoot, and it's not exactly the same. But I've always said like, I went many years where I shot Sporting Clays League and then I didn't, and then every year that I've shot all summer, my fall, I've like started the season like where I need to be. Right. As opposed to I'm a few hunts in and now I'm starting to I'm not the greatest shooter where I just pick up any shotgun and go out and just, automatically kick ass. But, I've always been okay enough. But
it's time.
I can just tell I'm just more polished. And it's like, I remember when I was playing football back in the day, and that first week of practice, you ball snaps, you pull, I'm running down the line. It's just chaos, right? Halfway through the season, everything's slowed down, right? You run it on, it's almost like you're watching it in slow motion. It's the same when you're out there and you hunt every day damn near during the duck season, right? So
it's practice. It's like game time every day.
So you're picking that bird out of the flock where, if somebody's not hunting as often or doesn't shoot as often, they're just seeing the flock.
There's no doubt. Like it practice makes perfect in anything, no matter what you're doing. Yeah. So my thing is always to like I said, stay at my feet per second. Other people might bounce around. They might say, hey, I'm going to shoot 3s at ducks. That's going maybe 1550, but then for bigger geese that maybe are moving a little slower, right? I can afford to go down to, say I switch to black cloud like BBs. You know what I mean? I'm going to go, heavy duty, or, we're going to go shoot cranes, and I want to shoot like we did it a couple years ago. Like, I know what it takes to kill them. I've never seen anything with more will to live than a crane. Sure. Honestly, I've never seen it. And it's like, I told the guys, I'm shooting TSS because I'm gonna put the hammer down. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't want to chase any. I don't want to like wrestle any. Like, I don't want the dog to go out and wrestle any. Like, you're just like looking at that, and I'm just going, and I know what it takes to kill them. Like, I've seen them take like body shots, head shots, and just like sail out. Like, I can't even believe it. So I'm just like, I'm going TSS.
Yeah.
So let's go to like Black Cloud and say, like, is the Speed Shock versus Black Cloud pellet counts very similar?
Yeah.
Like, if we're going
it's within a few pellets.
Okay.
Because you got regular round pellets, but then you have the flight stopper pellet. It
Correct.
does add a little surface area, but it boils down to.
But it's pretty damn close. Yeah. And then as far as feet per second on, let's say, Black Cloud versus Speed Shock, we're pretty close on that as well.
Yeah, they're pretty close. There's we've got the standard Black Cloud, what was launched first.
Yep.
What's kind of our bread and butter. Ounce and a quarter, 1450.
Yep.
And then our high velocity is actually an ounce and a quarter, 1635.
That thing is moving.
So it's a little faster than
that thing's moving
than the 1550 of the Speed Shock.
That thing's moving, and I think we've shot that a bunch on some snows. Mm-hmm. Because you're like, if they're coming in and like it's chaos and maybe you might have to take a little taller, you want it out there fast. Mm-hmm. So that's one thing that we've definitely done on that.
And I know some outfitter guys too that they prefer to have their client shoot faster shells, and the belief is that most people are behind them. Right? You
can watch it.
Yeah, I see myself. When I miss, or when I usually.
You're usually not ahead.
Yeah, I translate more to sporting clays, right? And
right.
Like, I missed the first shot, the second one I'll swing harder, and I got it. And on a hunting scenario, I think almost all of us are
always
behind the bird.
Yeah, it's like a warning shot, and you see it. Like I watched some guys like a week or so ago. We were somewhere, and a bird comes through, and it's right on the water, and you see the first person pull up and shoot, and I'm yelling, You're behind it, get ahead. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Because you could totally see the bird, and it just goes, shoo, and you're like, get ahead. You know what I mean? Yeah. So you're right. Like, nobody's ever like ahead of the first one that you just kind of blow it. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? The only time I've seen that is like when birds, like if you have some mallards dump in and all of a sudden they're like hovering, and then somebody stands up and they're like putting lead on something that you shouldn't put a lead on. Because then you'll see them shoot. And you'll see, like, I always see the one mallard, like he'll be going, and all of a sudden he'll go like this. He'll try to pull some matrix stuff, right? So you see him rear back and his head ducks down, and literally it goes right by. So that's one of the times that you are ahead. So you got to look at that and just kind of laugh. But I think you're right. Like, for the most part, guys are behind, and that's just a practice and a lead thing, and knowing what to do, and knowing what to shoot and your lead. Because, listen, the days of, like dropping off at a hunt camp and going in, and I would tell this all the time when I would talk about chokes and some other stuff in ammo, you'd see some guy with and he'd have a bag or a container of just shells, and there's, looks like a Christmas tree. There's red and green ones in there and blue ones in there. And like, he's got I don't even know what he's shooting, and he's jamming them in, and one's going 1550 right? And one's going 1300. Sure. And then the next one. So it's like, I'm ahead on the first one, and then I'm behind, and then I'm way behind. So it's like, you're never going to, there's no way you can do that. And I think guys today and gals have been way more, taught more. Like, there's so much more information, so they're better educated on, hey, listen, don't mix your feet per second up. You're just going to kill yourself. It's like if you load 3 shells and they're all different speeds, you're already at a disadvantage. You're a mess.
And there's subtle differences, right? Like, again, in sporting clays, or there's a discipline in sporting clays called VTASC. And VTASC is kind of a certain setup that and they're typically long range targets. So they've always ran fast, and it used to be an ounce and an eighth, a 1330. You can shoot whatever fast you want, however recoil you can handle.
Right.
But think 1350, and then we're talking lead. And then VTAS said, wow, these guys are getting too good at it, so we want to drop the shot size down. So they dropped it down to 1 ounce. And people kept kind of the same speed, and scores got better. So then they dropped it down to 7/8, the same speed, scores got better. Now, if you think you got less of a payload that you're pushing as hard, you're not getting as much recoil. So your barrel rise is dropping now, and you can get back on the bird
quicker.
So now they've kind of settled and gone back to 1 ounce. So that's kind of like, if you're going to.
So that didn't work.
Yeah. So if you're going to shoot a 12 gauge really fast, or that's like a lighter load may help you shoot better. So if you shoot a like 2 3/4 shells, they don't get a lot of, 3 inch is kind of king on everything.
There's no doubt.
But you can take a 2 3/4 inch shell that's slowed down maybe 50 feet per second faster than a 3 inch counterpart on an ounce and an eighth. And you're probably going to feel less recoil, and you're going to probably be able to get a quicker follow-up shot.
Because you're on target.
Might be a better shooter.
Yeah, you might be, like you said, 3 inches king. There's no doubt about it. But I don't think I've ran into a 2 3/4 inch shooter in a long time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I remember my dad shooting. I vividly remember as a kid, it was like 2 3/4 inch number 5s.
Yeah.
And I would just, I didn't know it then, but I'd just be watching ducks just get wrecked.
Sure. For me, early Minnesota duck season, a lot of wood ducks, up there. I'm like a black cloud, 3s or 4s, 2 3/4.
Yeah.
Ounce and eighths is one of my favorites.
Because you don't want to hammer. I mean, you want to try to like cook them. Mm-hmm. You don't want to like cook them on the spot.
Yes.
So you don't want to have overkill. You know what I mean? So so when we talk about that stuff, like I said, I always go back and forth on the speed and this and that. But some guys are a pellet count guy, like we talked about. Some guys want to like go like are like super speed. Like so on the Remington side, you guys are pushing speed on that.
The hypersonic.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's like 1,700 feet.
That's pushing.
Remington really. There was a time, like when steel came on and it first started, it was really slow.
Oh, yeah, there's no doubt. It was a mess.
Yeah, it just had a knock, and I kind of like where we're at as an industry now because the next generation, it's almost like the second generation of hunters coming up since all that stuff was tried in the 90s. Some of it's kind of faded away.
Yes.
And then it was like speed. And I think Remington kind of pushed it to the top, like where you shot it and guys are like, wow, we're killing birds, but man, that really hurts.
It's kicking a little. Yeah. Like,
but there's people that just swear by it, that just absolutely swear.
Listen, whatever works for you, do it. You know what I mean? If it's that, if it's pellets, is it speed, is it, whatever it is, like whatever works for you and you're dialed in. That's why there's so much on the market. Like you can look through and you can find anything. You know what I mean? Whatever you're doing, speed, pellet count, size, like whatever you want to do, it's there. There's something there. Like just so like a funny little story, but there was a guy a long time ago in the duck club that I got at the house, right? So he was loading his own. Now this is before the hypersonic, right? And he was like saying that he's got these shells and it's like coming out like 1,700 plus. Now this is like, I'm talking like some mad scientist stuff, right? It would be like sunny outside and you would see fire coming out of the barrel, right? Sure. And he shot like an old pump shotgun, and I literally sat by him one day, the one day he was loading and had it, and I was like, I will never sit by that guy ever again. Yeah. Like it was, everything about it was so abrasive, and I'm like sitting there going like, listen, this is not a scientist guy. This is not a guy working at an ammo company, right? Yeah, yeah. And I'm like, he's going to blow his gun up. Like something bad is going to happen. I don't know if anything ever did, but I was like, I'm not sitting there because I just see the potential of something going wrong. He's not, like I said, he is not a trained professional. And I was just, and everybody else in the club was like, yeah, that's a no. I'm not sitting by him. And early in the morning, it looked like a flamethrower.
Sure.
Like it was it was breathing fire. So that was pretty sketchy.
The whole other element of ammo is like the burn speed of the powder. You know, so you have some powders that we call it time to peak. So you're, like I said, boom, goes off. There's a pressure build, and then that pressure releases. Right. How fast is that pressure spike?
How fast? So that's
your time to peak.
Okay.
So if it's getting there, slower burning powders may peak fast. Like they're going to take, this is microseconds.
Sure,
right?
of course.
You know,
but it's still
take
time.
A little bit longer to get there rather than a real sharp. So that you think like certain gunpowders, like trap loads, have kind of a higher burn speed powder than a heavy ounce and 3/8 ounce and a quarter steel load that we're trying to light off.
Right.
Because if we put that fast powder, we're trying to push this bigger payload than a 1 ounce trap load. So we don't need that. We're not going to spike it as quickly, right?
Right.
So what that guy's probably using real slow burning powder, and you're seeing a bunch of unburned powder just burning off.
There's no doubt. Like we were like watching like something dangerous about to happen. So I was out of that. So then talk about like, so this is something that I don't really know about. You said it is like so minuscule on the time. But what about the burning? What's the thought process there on the, like you said, time to peak? Like, do you want a slower burning powder on a bigger?
It kind of depends. You'll naturally have to get that way just because to deal with the pressure. If you try to shove, imagine shoving water through a funnel.
Sure.
No matter what, you can only get so much through the funnel at one time.
Right.
If you put too much in there, it's always going to splash over the top.
That's right.
Rather than go in. So that's kind of that's a rough analogy, but
yeah, but you can get it. I can understand that though.
It's the same. So we will use at Federal. We've always used kind of a slower burning powder, and you get a little bit elongated pressure curve, but that gave us with a hot primer. So a hot primer is going to help you ignite this slower burning powder a little better.
Right.
And for us, that gave us real repeatable ballistics. The byproduct of slower burning powder is that your shells are, you get a little more unburned powder, it might be a little dirtier. So Federal, if any time I work anywhere, people tell me your shells are dirty. And so we kind of have, for every load, we'll have probably 4 or 5 powder alternates. Just like pick up a reloading manual, like, Spear, Hornady, whoever. Inside there, you got a rifle powder 1, and then 2 or 3 more selections that you can use. We're no different as an ammo manufacturer. So we have one primer that we really love, and then we'll have some alternates. If we can't get powder number 1, we got to go to powder number 2. If we can't get powder number 3, or the lot isn't shooting in how we want, we'll go to lot number 2 of a different burn speed to try to get there.
But you guys a couple of years ago went and changed some powder so it wasn't as dirty. And me personally, I don't remember it being very dirty. I've shot in way other ammos when I was younger and coming through, and whatever you could buy or whatever you could afford at the time. You know what I mean? That was way dirtier. Do you know what I mean? So I've been shooting blue box for so long that I just go, I don't see it as a dirty shell because. Listen, the way the shotguns are made today and the way they can take it, and you don't have to, clean them every time you go. Like, I just don't see the buildup on the gun side, that I'm going, oh, this is a dirty ammo. Where I could pick 5 other ammos that I guarantee you are filthy. Yeah. You know what I mean?
When I mentioned the primer, like American primers are, Federal probably has the hottest primer on the market. Like we use the more volatile compounds. Everybody else uses kind of a similar lead stiffening. We use basic lead stiffening. Europeans, shot shells, use a lot of not the hottest primer and what's called single base propellants, which don't burn well at all. And those would be typically are what we would call filthy. Right. But dirty is such a subjective term too, right? I've heard, from on handgun ammo, this brand to this brand to this brand.
Right.
They're all probably shooting the same powder, It's all probably the same recipe. So there's just a lot that goes into it, whether, one lot of powder is that powder, but, it might burn slightly different and we have to adjust the payload because of that lot's coming in this way.
Sure.
And that may give you a little more unburn, a little less this time. But we have put every effort forward to try to, minimize the amount of unburned powder,
Listen, where everything used to be, like you said, when steel started to now, I mean, it is 100% better. It is night and day because, listen, there were the days where you're like, steel sucks. This is the worst thing that's ever happened when everything, changed over from lead, and everybody's trying to do the whole steel thing, and it was like there was not obviously as much knowledge and research and development and years of going, hey, this is what we need to do. So I think, like you said, like right now where it's at, it's in a really good place. Like you cannot complain about what's on the market of what you can shoot today.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's no way.
Yeah, and like on ammo side and gun side too. You know, I think
There's no doubt. We're peaking. Pretty.
It really does feel. You know, we talk about innovation and what we can do, and like, you know, we really on a lot of these things we're tripping at the edges. You know, to try to find what's that next little percentage that we can get. You know, because you know we're 94% of the way there. You know, so we're scrapping.
I talk about it all the time on the decoy side. Like listen, we are as close as we can be on how good a decoy can look. We are like scraping, like you said, we are at the edge of like what's next, like what can you do? Like there's always little improvements and stuff like that, but those huge improvements, like that stuff has all been like that's already done.
Yeah, we're, you know, I would say on a firearms setting, we're kind of at like what's the next system, and that next system is going to be, you know, a very bold, a very different firearm system.
Yeah.
You know, compared to what we're working with today.
Yeah.
But that technology isn't quite there yet, so we keep working with what we got.
So let's talk like some pellet counts on like 20 gauge, because a lot of folks like, oh my God, the 20 gauge market has exploded. I'll talk about some 20 gauge stuff in a little, because I hunt with a couple guys who only shoot 20s and whatever. So what's like 3-inch twos on a 20?
Yeah, so like you're probably looking at 1 ounce load.
Yeah.
You know, so you go, it's in 125 pellets versus your ounce and an eighth.
It was
141.
141.
So
Right.
It's you know, that's a 16 and change.
Right.
So which isn't a lot, right?
Yeah.
And
So
then,
it's right. It's not a ton, but you're talking about, you know, the size of the pellets. Like, are they
that'd be twos, you know, so that's
it's twos,
pellet for pellet.
it's pellet for pellet. So you're just talking about a little less, and then you're talking about the same speed, right?
Yeah, so if you look at like in a blue box WF load,
Right.
you know, you're going, that's 1550 as well.
Right.
So you're
just losing some pellets.
You're losing some pellets, so then our recoil discussion came in. You're probably gonna have a little less recoil.
That's right.
That might be compensated, but the frame of your gun might be smaller because
Yeah.
it's not 12 gauge. So you're probably kind of shooting on par. So in the WF or the speed shock
Sure.
loads, we have the faster load in Black Cloud. It's a little slower. I think we're at 1350. You know, so
Right.
that's going to be. So if you went from your 20 gauge 1350, from your 1550 12 gauge to your 1350 20 gauge, your shooting experience, you would probably start seeing your difference in the lead. Really,
I would be a mess.
Especially as, you know,
Yeah.
10 yards, no big deal. 20 yards, right there. 30 yards, we're starting to get to the edge of our decoy spread.
Now you're changed.
Now that's where you're going to have to start to accommodate. And you'll find that, you know, people who shoot a lot, they'll pick it up, you know, relatively quickly. But right out the gate, you know,
you're going to have problems.
It might take you a couple.
Well, and then talk about, you know, you talk about crossing birds, right? Like right to left, left to right, like fast birds. Let's talk about divers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Ripping through, you know what I mean? Or something like, or teal. Like at that point, you are really handicapped on that because you're a mess. Because you're talking about going that slow. Now you got to get, you know, twice as far, 3 times as far ahead of that bird because it's going 3 times faster than the mallard that was just kind of sailing through, right? So now you're really stuck in a bind. So that's what I said. So there's a lot that goes into that. So,
but I mean, 20 gauge, we've seen more growth in waterfowl 20 gauge in the past 10 years than almost any other category.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of weird how things jump on. And in upland, you know, 16 gauge is all the rage and has been for like 10 years. You know, so.
What about, let's talk like, because I talked about cranes and TSS. So let's talk about TSS because that seems to be like something that everybody wanted to go and make. You know what I mean? Like everybody's chasing that TSS model, let's call it. So let's talk about that. Like what's the what's the word I want to start with? Like, what's the big deal, or what's the advantage
why
of
would you
TS?
want it even?
Yeah, like why do I want to spend that much
Sure.
on something like that? Like, I know the value of it as far as like I want to shoot that because I know it is like a solid smash on a big bird, like a crane or a giant honker. You know what I mean? I know what it can do, the value in the field.
Yeah.
Right. So give me some information on like why somebody would want to go and shoot that.
Sure. So think about we talked about double Bs before, right?
Right.
So let's say I got 1.25 ounces of double Bs that I'm going to shoot. I got 90 pellets.
Okay.
Okay. We've got a Black Cloud TSS load, which has got number 7 tungsten super shot.
Yep.
And some double Bs in it, and they're in there together. For people who don't know what is TSS,
Yeah, go ahead.
Metals are a density game.
Yes.
Right? So it's 7.6 grams per cc density in steel. So if you got a 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter cube and you weigh it, 7.6 grams.
Okay.
Bismuth would be 9.6, lead would be 11, and then tungsten can start anywhere from 10 to 18, depending on how much iron you mix with it.
Right.
So like a Hevi 12 from Hevi Shot or Wingmaster HD from Remington would be 12.
Okay.
And then tungsten super shot is 18. It's about as close to raw tungsten as you can come out of the ground.
So I mean that's blowing away lead.
Yeah. So you
Because
think
lead's at what? What did you say?
11.
11.
So it's like twice as dense as lead almost. So you think like two things flying at the same speed, the denser one's going to hit an awful lot harder.
There's no doubt.
We in Black Cloud TSS. But you think about it, because it is denser. When you weigh it, gravity affects it more.
Sure.
So to get 1 ounce of like an ounce of steel,
Yes.
I'm exaggerating.
Yeah, yeah.
Like this.
Sure.
An ounce of TSS, it only takes that much to fill it up.
Right.
So inside your shell, we got all this space that we
Right.
have to fill. So we said, well, if we can duplex loads, which is what hand loaders were doing with TSS or waterfalls, and then they're filling the space with steel.
Right.
So we did 1.25 ounces by pellet count. 60% of that is steel and 40% is
the tungsten.
super shot.
Right.
So our 1.25 ounces, the long way around, our 1.25 ounces regular 3-inch double B is going to be 90 pellets.
Right.
By putting 7s, tungsten
And
super shot,
BBs.
and steel BBs together, those two, even though it's much smaller, have about the same energy when they hit something. We've just jumped our pellet count up to 145. So you've really rounded out the pattern yourself. So you're getting BB performance in the payload that we can load it to, but a much fuller pattern.
So the BBs are just regular steel.
Yep.
And then the 7s are the tungsten super shot. So if we had a race on the BBs and the 7s, right, coming down at the same speed.
They fly roughly together. Yeah. If we were to change that, if we were to say like 7s and 4 steel or 2, we would start to see a discrepancy, which is why we pick 3s and 9s and 7s and double Bs, because
there's
have
an
roughly
actual
the same mass.
Well, and because
not mass, the same energy flying at the same speed.
Well, and because folks would ask like, well, why the hell would they pick like BBs and 7s or 3s and 9s? Like, because I will say that 3 and 9 combo is ridiculous. That's what we were shooting on the cranes, and I would just see it flat out. Like, when you would hit them. Like, it was a done deal. It was just a light switch out.
Yeah.
So that's what you're saying. So as far as speed and going down range, that's why you pick those two.
That's why they fly. That's why because
So it flies together.
They should hang together as they fly. You can go like your ultimate if you want to go ultimate. To me, like I think an ounce and an eighth of like number 7 shot, or 1.25 ounces or number 7 shot, like in a
super shot.
Inch. Yeah, like we load out of our custom shop. We do some of this, just 100% TSS loads.
Oh my God.
There's a big price tag attached to them, but
Sure.
I mean, you got a lot of pellets, ton of energy. And I mean that'd be kind of the ultimate. And so
What kind of speed would that run at?
you could put it
If it was just
So if you wanted to match like that double B load and get the most, you could put it at around that 1400, 1450, depending on. It's like if you went up to 1 ounce and 3/8, you'd have to slow it down a
Sure.
little more. But like the big kicker on
Oh my
TSS
God.
and why it's done well, we do so much in Turkey, and that's really where it's.
Well, that's a whole other conversation. Absolutely.
Because you got the smaller pellets, like the 9 shot, it's
Yep.
the same energy as a 3, but you've tripled your payload. So you got
Yes.
all these more pellets, which makes it mean, okay, so I got so many more pellets. If I go from 1.25 ounces down to a 1 ounce, say, I still got a ton of pellets, and now
Right.
I can go in the smaller payload that's going to give me way less recoil, far more comfortable to shoot, and now a 410 is a viable goose gun, right? Or a 28 gauge, and that's so the tungsten technology I think is helping us drive a lot of the sub gauge.
There's no doubt it is. I mean, look what it did on the turkey side. Like, you're seeing all these guys, not that you couldn't do it before, but now you're seeing like flat out guys like throttle a turkey at 30 yards with a 410 and it's lights out. Like there's no nothing. Like you're seeing that. Like, listen, like when I had Cole, when I had my son first start hunting, it was like, we're going to start on the single shot 410 because we're going for safety and you know what I mean? We're doing all that. And I would see him like we're going to land some birds and he's going to, shoot them. And I would watch him shoot the 410 and just like put it right over the bird and the bird would just like shake it off and go, you know what I mean? And it's like, and then I remember like when it came out, I remember calling JJ at the office and I go, listen, I don't know what I need to do, but I need 410 TSS and I need some here like now for waterfowl season because I wanted him to like kill a bird. He was shooting right on top. You'd see him hit him and the birds would just shake it off and go. And I'm like, I cannot do this anymore. Like I'm ruining his confidence because he's there, you know what I mean? So the TSS literally changed that whole thing for him and gave him some confidence, and he wasn't, he was running a single shot. It's not like he was running 3 shells and burning it up every time. And I'm going, I'm seeing, dollar signs just like ejecting.
Sure. The thing, like, have you shot ducks with the 410 stuff?
I have not shot ducks with the 410 TSS. I'm just like, I just haven't done it.
That would be interesting for you because when I sent it to people who shoot a lot like you, if you were, and we know a lot of our turkey loads are getting translated into.
They definitely
loads,
are.
Right?
They definitely are.
So that's like 1,100 feet per second. So you're going from 1,500 to 11. Your lead, and somebody told me, goes, man, I had to lead them like crazy.
I couldn't even imagine doing that. That's why I said like on the turkey stuff it'd be easy because like they're not there. Well, sometimes you got to clip one on the run if you really have to. But if you shoot one and one's running,
they're fairly stationary. When you're
so I've had instances where you call 2 in and the first guy shoots it and then the other one's standing there and he takes off and you're like, well, I'm gonna give her a go and just let it fly. So, but I think that has totally come over from the turkey side to the waterfowl side because I remember even Steve and Stevie at the Rogers office like going, hey, I want TSS to sell during waterfowl season because this is pretty cool and guys need to shoot this. And then you guys built some stuff and it like was gone.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that went nuts. So I think that's added a whole new side of what's going on in the ammo market, which like you said, like what's next? What's like the next big thing? And obviously it was like the TSS, right? So that's the next thing. And it's always trying to improve on what's out there and give, another option or, you're trying to talk about all the time, build a better mousetrap. Like it's faster, it's cleaner, it's less recoil, like whatever. You're always trying to do something.
Like, what are our next frontiers? We're like, well, we could design a new wad. Well, what do we want that wad to do? All right, do we want it to open up? Does it need to open up faster? Does it need to open up slower? Is it pushing? Are we trying to push range more? I feel like we're almost trying to come back a little bit. Where for a while it was like range. And now it's kind of like, hey, what and I'm a big pusher of this in turn. I'm like, let's call the ducks into our decoys and shoot them in the face, right? Because it ultimately comes down to whether that having the right equipment to bring the birds where you need them, or having the right ammo to give you the energy you need at the ranges that you're at. It's to be more lethal or to be more effective is going to start to have more of a price tag to it, right?
Right.
Better decoys cost money. Better gear to keep you warm cost money.
Always.
Better shotguns going to cost money. But I think in ammo, you will see typically as that price tag starts to go up, your hit count will get better.
Yeah.
You'll start to drop more birds. So then it just kind of becomes, what's that value proposition to you? Or do you want to spray and pray and you're gonna ethically retrieve 3/4 of the birds you put down, or can we get that percentage higher so we're getting them all coming in? with a buck or two more a box.
I personally didn't like the section, which was only a few years ago, of pushing the limits of how far can we shoot, because that to me was like disheartening on the sport. You know what I mean? Because I'm 100% exactly what you're talking about. And listen, I understand there's other people who are like, listen, I hunt public, I do this, I have a duck club, we're going to all these places, like I've done it all. So I'm not like the, let's say I'm not the high fence snob who, is only shooting like penned birds, you know what I mean? Or a penned animal. Like that's not me. Like we're running and gunning everywhere. So I don't care where I'm at. I still want to put the birds as close as I can get them. Like I don't care. And if I don't finish them, like if we get to start shooting a little tall, like I'll do that. But I'm not that 50, 60 yard guy that's like, I need range, a long range. I need longer range. I need like the longest range ammo. You know what I mean? Like when it was going that route, like I really was like, I was like, man. And then all the chokes started with, you could stretch out, you could shoot them at 90, and you're doing all this, and I'm like, that's not what this is all about. Like that's not the sport that we're in. And listen, I get it. If you're on a management area, and if you don't take them at 50 on this turn or 45, the guys over here at 90 are gonna just shoot at them. Like listen, I feel the pain. I've seen it, and I know that route. But if everybody kind of pulled back a little bit and said, hey, let's try to get them a little bit closer, and then let's gear our marketing and stuff towards that. Get them close, kill them close. Let's not have the cripples. Like you're gonna have cripples, you just are. But let's like minimize the loss. Let's say on the game side. You know what I mean? Like let's minimize that. Like let's put it back to a real sport and pushing hard on ethics and shooting close and like just doing all that. Like. I don't know. Like I've always been on that side ever since we started, because that's how I learned. Like that's how I was taught. Like my dad, my grandfather, you'd walk for pheasants when we were younger in Pennsylvania, or we were shooting geese, and everything was like, get it as close as you can. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I was kind of taught by like, friends. I had one older mentor, my friend's uncle, who, took me goose hunting for the first time. Took me out in the water. I'm hunting with an older guy, not just some 16-year-old kids. Couple mallards come in, land right in front of us, and I'm standing there kind of waiting, and he just looks at me and goes, "We'll shoot him."
I get it.
So I'm like, "Oh, this is what you do." So I kind of traveled this, just do whatever you got to do to get a bird, sky bust, whatever, and then you kind of learn, like, as you get better.
Well,
boy,
sure.
If we do this and we like actually get them in, boy, it sure gets a lot better. So from an ammo side, I like knowing that we have the ability to push the envelope. And mainly from a forgiveness standpoint. You call the shot long, not because we intentionally did so, but it gave us some forgiveness. Right?
It gives you some leeway. Yes, it gives you a buffer.
They're busting out, and you got that. You got to take that Hail Mary to try to get the last one of the flock done. But ultimately, it's about getting more birds on the table so that we can keep the sport going. We can feed ourselves and have a good time doing it.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It feels like it is kind of turning the other way.
I think it is.
It's the struggle of like pushing technology though too. Like what is making ammo better usually means making it more range.
Right, you could stretch, right? It does a lot more. It's got more characteristics. It has more of a plus side, right?
Yeah.
So like you said, like I said, it's cleaner, it's faster, it's like like you just go through everything, you know what I mean? You could stretch it farther, like everything about that. But I think it is, and everybody kind of backed off that, and now I think you are right. Like it's making the turn to come back to, let's get them close. Like, yeah, the ammo can do that. Like if you need to do that, you know what I mean? Like, listen, some days the snow geese piss you off to no end where you're like, you know what? We're going to take them tall because like we've had it.
Yeah.
We just spent 2 hours putting out.
You want to get something, right? You do want to get something.
We just spent 2 hours putting out, 2,000 rags, socks and whatever else. And you're like, this is the third day of it. And you're like, you know what? I think we need to stretch it a little. Like, yes, you have the technology to kind of do that kind of stuff. But like, you also need to be, I always talk about this. Like I'm not a tall shooter. I'm not a great tall shooter because I don't shoot that much like that. Mm-hmm. But there's a couple guys that I hunt with, Brad Fenson, who's up in Canada. Brad is probably one of the best tall shooters that I've seen.
Yeah.
Because, and it's not even about practice and doing that. He knows his lead, no matter, and he knows his distances. Because listen, there's some times where guys are shooting, and I think the problem is they don't know their distances. You know what I mean? That's a huge thing. You're like, birds come in, and you're like, oh, why didn't we take them? And I'm like, bro, they're like at 45. What do you mean, why didn't we take? Like, I want them at 25. Like, what are you talking about? Oh, no, that was 30. That was easy 30. And I'm like, walk it off. And they walk out, and they're like close to 50. I'm like, see? I'm like, you don't know your distance. So that's one thing. But he knows his distance and his lead. And if you can chop those two things, then he's got it licked.
Yeah.
Like, he knows what to do. So I've seen him test.
Yes. Good shooters, right?
There's no doubt.
That's a part of it. I think good vision, good depth perception, and, you know, like some of the sporting clays guys I know, I was on dove hunt, and, you know, we're just banging away at, you know, high doves for, you know, half the day, and then you wait for them to come out at the end and just, you know, clean up if you're not done by then. And, you know, like my boss, Jesse Whiteside, great sporting clay shooter. I think he limited out on doves in 18 shots, where the rest of us were 2 boxes in.
Right, we're chipping away.
You know, I'm sitting on 6. You know, so, but yeah, he's got that. He's like a Brad. You know, he's really got that good feel for it.
And Kyle from Weatherby, I've seen him, like, so I've seen both Brad and Kyle use TSS and, you know, stretch the limits of TSS to 80 plus and knock something down stone dead. Like, that I've seen. So can it do it? Yeah. Do they do it often? No. Is there a time where they just go, I'm going to take a poke and see, you know? And we always joke, David Draper, who's another writer. I remember we were up in Canada one time, and he was like, I'm going to take a poke at these snows that come over again. And I was like, bud, go for it. And sure as heck, he stands up, gets his lead right. I don't know if that's the one he was aiming for, so I don't know that for sure, but he shoots, and one just crumples out of the group and comes down. And he's like, I was like, I said, I don't know what lead you put on that, or even if that's the one you were shooting for. And he was like, I put 2 canoes on him. So that's like always the joke. Like, you know,
how many canoes did you get?
Yeah, I'm telling you, because if you know it, like you said, if you know it and you know all that stuff, you can do it. But yes, good shooters can shoot anything, anytime. They know their environment, and they know the ballistics and what they need to do. So, I mean, my thing to everybody, you know, that's kind of listening to this, watching this, doing whatever, like, either like go through your details and your information and what you're doing. Like, what are you hunting for? What are you going to shoot mostly? And your situations, you know, and dial yourself into a winning category, meaning that, you know, you're familiar with the shotgun you're shooting, and you're staying with the choke that you're shooting, right? And then you go to your ammo, and like, we're going to shoot big geese, so I'm going to do this. And listen, if you change your choke and your ammo at the same time, like, as long as you know what it's doing, and you're comfortable and can get it, like, go for it. You know what I mean? Like, just don't change stuff to change stuff. Like, oh, we're hunting big geese, so I'm changing my choke and my ammo. But maybe you didn't even change anything, or you changed it for the worse, right?
Yeah, and you'll find, you know, there's sweet combos that you'll find.
No doubt.
Your gun with this choke and that load, and that might be a shot size bigger or smaller than your normal is. Right?
That's right.
Or you'll shoot, you know, you spent $150 on a Pattern Master or whatever, or some other gun, and then the factory choke coming out of your Benelli is just lights out. You know, sometimes that happens. So don't, you know, it's like, don't be married to a piece of gear if your piece of gear isn't going to give you the best performance.
That's what I'm saying. And this is the off-season stuff, and try this, or even while you're, listen, if you get out and hunt a bunch, like, listen, try whatever you need to try, and get yourself into the right position so you can, you know, do more and, you know, kill more birds, you know, kill them cleanly and do the whole deal. Like, there's, like you said, there's a million options, but there's so much right now out there.
Yeah.
And the technology is just through the roof that, like, this day and age, and all the videos and all the information, like, dude, if you can't get it right now, like, you're just being lazy, because there is so much to learn. Like this was all like guesswork back in the day. Like you're just like, yeah, I shoot 2 3/4 inch 5s and I know I kill them. That's what I'm shooting.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And I shoot it out of the old Model 12 or something, you know, whatever it is, right? And I'm killing them. But now there's just so many factors and so many things that you can add and put in that it's just.
Yeah. And I think like just to dilute it down and like what can you do to be the best shooter with no matter what ammo you're picking. Take your shotgun, take your choke tube, take your load, get a big old piece of cardboard, put a mark in the center, 30, 40 yards,
Yep.
shoot it at each one of those distances and just see what your patterns do. Because at first maybe your gun shoots high and you had no
Listen, you had no idea. There's no doubt.
Yeah, so do that, and then pick a load and hunt with it a while.
Yep.
And then try another load, and you'll find the one and sometimes not even rational. Like we're shooting Black Cloud 3s today. Probably the best I've ever shot with any load is Black Cloud 3s for whatever reason. And maybe it's all
fits you.
maybe it's all up here, but I just feel like if that's what I'm shooting, I know
You're gonna kill, right? And it might be. Listen, this is a mental game as well. Like it might be mental.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Like listen, when you're shooting like crap, you go into it. It is mental. You go in the toilet and you're done. Like you just gotta shake it off and come back. So it is mental for sure. So yeah, I think you just gotta get dialed in. And then if you're gonna pattern on the board, I always tell guys, pattern on the water too. Like put a jug out, put something out, or even just shoot on the water at a spot and see your shot string so you can really see. Or while you're hunting, like say, hey, I'm gonna shoot the next cripple because I want to see what I'm doing. And then I'm gonna try this shell and I'm gonna try this shell. So you really see what it's doing on the water.
You'll be surprised.
Oh, it's an eye opener because listen, you could look at the pattern board all you want and you're like, well, it all got here at the same time. Well, no, it didn't.
Yes.
It's all on the paper at one time, sure. But when you see it live and on the water, that is the biggest tell, I think. So I always tell guys, make sure you check that. So listen, tons of information out there. If you want any kind of info, hit up Federal, hit up Hevi Shot, hit up Remington, all the ammo manufacturers that you guys have at Vista. You can check, like there is so much information. Like you can go to YouTube, like you can go countless places. You can go on the choke tube side. You can go through all the chokes that are out there and what's there. You can go on the gun side. Like there is so much information right now to get dialed in. Like it shouldn't be. I'm not saying it's easy, but I'm saying it's all there.
Definitely
you got to do your homework.
You can get started a lot easier than it was back in the day.
No doubt.
For sure.
Dan Compton from Federal. Bro, thanks. Appreciate it. If you need more info, like I said, hit them up, hit us up, fabrand.com, go to the YouTube channel, hit us up on social, like whatever you need to do. We're fabrand.com.ca up in Canada. You can find us in all our international distributors throughout Europe. So if you need something, you just hit us up, and we always on social answering questions. So if you need us, whatever, just holler at Dan and the guys.
On Facebook, Instagram.
Yep. Hit them up.
Federalpremium.com.
There you go. Appreciate you checking it out.